Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, Senior Fellow at the Media Research Center. You know, when we look at what just happened this past weekend in Venezuela, it really has to be concerning to all of us that believe in individual liberties and freedom and individual sovereignty. When you think about what the United States of America and indeed Western civilization stands for, without a doubt, we saw the utmost and most despicable violations of human rights. The fact that you have a government that is starving its own people, denying its people medicine and the means by which they can care for themselves, and then using armed force to gun them down in the streets. This has to be something that we cannot stand for, but yet, let's be very honest with ourselves. The problem with socialism is that, well, it's socialism. And no matter where you go, no matter where it is tried, it always starts and it always ends up in the very same way. And we are now seeing how it ends up once again. All the promises that are made to all of the people about this will be given to you free and that will be given to you free. Well, somehow socialism, Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, took one of the most prosperous nations in Latin America, and now they're gunning down the people in the streets. People are starving. People are eating pets. People are eating zoo animals. People are out of work. People are even, well, some reports said, such as in the Washington Post, I believe, that some people are turning even to prostitution to be able to take care of themselves. That's not what we should be seeing in the 21st century. That's not what should be happening in our hemisphere. But let's talk about how it all begins with socialism. Because I think when you look at the way that it got started in Venezuela, you will understand that there are no coincidences with socialism. There's always a talk about wealth redistribution. We're going to take from one group of people and we're going to give it to another group of people. And remember, that's what Karl Marx started out with when he said, from each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs. And with socialism, you have a small group of people that decide and define what an ability is and also what a need is. You see Bernie Sanders, you see Kamala Harris, you see Cory Booker, you see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you see Julian Castro, all of these people, Elizabeth Warren, that are deciding what is the amount that, well, you can't have, and that they will take from you and redistribute to others. When you think about how in Colombia and Venezuela, they nationalized economic production. The oil and gas industry there is so immense, so powerful, more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. And now look at what has happened, all because the government came in and nationalized it, which means they brought that production, that economic means, that economic, well, engine under the control of government. That's not the free market. That's not free enterprise. And that's how you take one of the most prosperous countries in Latin America, and you have people now eating pets and eating out of garbage cans, losing on average 20 pounds. When you think about how socialism talks about making everyone one and the same, this whole concept of social egalitarianism, social equality, that's how you end up with a Venezuela. That's how people such as Stalin and Lenin and Chairman Mao and all the other great dictators, the Castros, Che Guevara, how they have been successful. Because it does sound enticing that we're going to bring social justice, we're going to have social equality, we're going to put everyone on the same footing. Well, guess what? When we look at our sports teams, everyone starts the season 0-0, but only one ends up at the end of the season as a champion. Should we disparage, denigrate, and demean that person that came through a season based upon their own efforts to become a champion? I think everyone was celebrating that Bohemian Rhapsody movie. I remember Queen once sang a song called We Are the Champions. The free market and free enterprise system allows people to be champions. See, socialism needs a welfare nanny state. Socialism needs to make people dependent upon it. That's what you see in Venezuela. And that's the rhetoric that you hear being, well, espoused here in the United States of America right now. There are no coincidences with socialism. There are no different levels of, well, this kind of socialism or that kind of socialism. It's all wealth redistribution. It's all nationalizing economic production. It's all creating and expanding a welfare nanny state. It's all about social egalitarianism. And it's also about secular humanism. Because your trust cannot be in God with a big G. It has to be in government with a little g. You cannot believe that your inalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness come from a creator, which is what John Locke called natural rights theory. No, it comes from man. And it's not your ability to pursue your happiness, it's their ability to guarantee your happiness. And so therefore, rights become not inalienable rights granted from a creator, endowed from a creator, but instead they're whatever an ideological agenda says. Free healthcare is a right. Free college education is a right. Marriage equality and freedom for everyone to get married, that's a right. It's whatever the progressive socialist in their mind believes is aligned with their ideological agenda. But the most important thing about how socialism gets started, I went back and looked up some articles because I wondered, how did Venezuela get to a point where innocent people are being gunned down in the streets because they want food, they want medicine? See, I found an article by the BBC dated June the 1st of 2012, and it talked about the new law that Hugo Chavez was going to implement. That law made private gun ownership illegal. That's how it starts. And what did Hugo Chavez use? Well, he used the gun violence excuse. The same thing that you hear here in the United States of America. As a matter of fact, it was just a couple of weeks ago that Nancy Pelosi stood in a press conference and saying that President Trump has to be very careful about using national emergency declarations because the Democratic president could use a national emergency declaration on gun violence. Exact same thing Hugo Chavez did. See, the first and foremost thing that socialism has to do is has to turn you from being a citizen to a subject. And the only way that that can happen is to disarm you. See, this country was started because a few people came out on April the 19th of 1775 at a place called Lexington Green in Massachusetts because the British had landed. And they were marching toward Concord, Massachusetts with one intended purpose: to destroy a weapons armaments factory. They were met there by brave patriots who said, "We shall not be disarmed." And they fired the shot that was heard around the world because they understood that an armed individual is a citizen, but an unarmed individual, you get gunned down in the streets because you're starving. That's how socialism begins, because ideological domination has to be able to dominate you. Socialism is all about coercion, mandate, intimidation, threats, and yes, violence. And that's why we don't see too many of these, let's be very honest, the socialists here in America speaking out and condemning what is happening in Venezuela. As a matter of fact, Bernie Sanders kind of stumbled over trying to, well, he couldn't even denounce Nicolas Maduro as a socialist dictator. But yet, Bernie Sanders is running for president here in the United States of America. There are no coincidences with socialism. And the problem with socialism is that it is socialism. And who would have ever thought that a president of these great United States of America would have to stand up in a State of the Union address and say these simple words: America will never be a socialist country. You want to know why they don't like the Second Amendment? Because that's the gateway to their ideological domination.